Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a concept that's both ancient and, well, honestly, it's mind-bendingly futuristic. The Akashic Records. I've been looking over the material you sent. And it dives into this idea of like a universal compendium of knowledge. And frankly, I'm kind of obsessed with the implications.
Yeah, it's a concept that captures the imagination. This idea that there's a record of every event, every thought, every possibility, stretching from the beginning of the universe to its very end. It really challenges how we think about time, information, even reality itself.
It really does. And what really grabs me is how the source material connects this seemingly esoteric concept to both science and personal experience. I mean, we're talking about a poverty-stricken math genius, a famous inventor, even religious figures, all potentially tapping into this same source of knowledge. So I think let's unpack this.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the basics. The term Akashic Records comes from the Sanskrit word akasha, meaning ether or space. It's been visualized as a library, a field, a database, but the core idea is consistent. It's a universal repository of information. It's also fascinating to note that even ancient texts, like the Mahabharata, which predates the term itself, it hints at a similar concept. There's this passage that describes a celestial scribe recording every action and thought, kind of like a precursor to the Akashic Records as we know it.
So this isn't just some like new age invention. This has roots that go way back. But how does this Akashic concept tie into real world examples? You know the story of Srinivasa Ramanujan, the Indian mathematician, really stood out to me in the material that you sent. This guy was producing groundbreaking mathematical formulas with practically no formal training and claiming that his insights came from a goddess in his dreams.
Yeah. Ramanujan's story is a really compelling one. He produced a staggering amount of highly complex, accurate formulas, many of which couldn't even be proven during his lifetime. And you're right. He attributed his knowledge to divine inspiration, specifically the goddess Namagiri.
Okay. Now, it's easy to dismiss that as like mystical mumbo-jumbo, but then you have the fact that one of his final formulas, which he claimed came from a dream, was found in 2012 to accurately describe black holes. Black holes. Something completely unknown during his lifetime. It makes you wonder, what was this guy tapping into?
Exactly. It really raises the question, was Ramanujan accessing a level of information beyond our current understanding? Perhaps through the Akashic Records and his story. It's a powerful example of how these records, if they exist, might be accessed through altered states of consciousness like dreams.
Okay, so if we're talking about information beyond our normal perception, isn't this where religion and spirituality come in? I noticed that our source material mentions a link between the Akashic Records and various spiritual traditions.
Yeah, that's right. You know the Theosophical Society, a spiritual organization founded in the late 19th century. They believe that all religions, ultimately, draw from the same source, the Akashic Records. And figures like Moses, Buddha, and Confucius are seen by some as individuals who tapped into this universal knowledge, each expressing it through the lens of their own culture and time.
So different religions, different beliefs, but all potentially drawing from the same wellspring of knowledge. It's like different cultures tapping into the same internet, just using different devices and interfaces.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. And it ties into the idea of the Akashic Records as a unifying force.
Yeah.
Like a common thread connecting these seemingly disparate spiritual traditions. It also raises questions about collective consciousness and Jungian archetypes, concepts we might explore further down the line.
Okay. Yeah. Let's maybe hold off on that for now before my brain explodes. Let's bring this back to something a little more concrete. What about the science? Is there any way to explain the Akashic Records from a scientific perspective? Or is this purely in the realm of the metaphysical?
Well, speaking of scientific connections, our source material introduces us to Michio Kaku. He's a theoretical physicist. And he proposes the existence of the zero-point field. This field, which permeates all of space, is thought to be like a sea of quantum energy, even at absolute zero temperature. Kaku suggests that this field could actually be the physical basis for the Akashic Records, kind of like a universal information storage medium.
Wait, so there might be a scientific basis for this cosmic library. Okay,
All right.
that changes things. But how exactly would information be stored in this
Energy field. Well, think about it this way. Everything in the universe, from galaxies to atoms, is ultimately energy. And according to quantum physics, information can be encoded in energy states, so the zero-point field, with its constant fluctuation of quantum energy, could theoretically hold vast amounts of information, potentially even the entire history and future of the universe.
Okay, so stay with me here. We're talking about information encoded at the quantum level. Maybe even the same principles behind quantum computing. This is where my brain starts to melt a little. But before I go full sci-fi, there was another scientific idea. that really caught my attention in the material. Laplace's demon.
Ah, yes, Laplace's demon. It's a thought experiment
Hmm.
about a hypothetical being that knows the precise location and momentum of every particle in the universe. And with that knowledge, this demon could theoretically predict the entire future with perfect accuracy. So the source material uses this concept to illustrate that from a purely scientific standpoint. If information is never truly lost, there must be a mechanism for storing and accessing it, which is where the Akashic Records concept comes in. It's like the ultimate cosmic hard drive.
Okay, so we've got ancient spiritual traditions, quantum physics, even thought experiments about all-knowing demons, all converging on this idea of a universal storehouse of knowledge. It's wild. But if this knowledge is out there, how do we tap into it? The source material mentions a few methods, right?
Right. The most intriguing aspect to me is the potential role of the right brain. You see, the right brain is associated with intuition, creativity, and holistic thinking. And many of the examples we've discussed, from Ramanujan to Tesla, were known for their intuitive leaps and unconventional thinking. So the source material suggests that accessing the Akashic Records might involve shifting our focus from left brain logic to right brain intuition.
So it's not about thinking harder, it's about thinking differently, like switching from a spreadsheet to a mood board.
Maybe that's why the Akashic Records are often described as being experienced visually, more like images and symbols than words on a page.
Precisely. And this leads us to another fascinating method that the source material touches on, lucid dreaming. This is a state where you become aware that you're dreaming and can even control the dream environment. And some believe that lucid dreaming could be a powerful tool for consciously accessing the Akashic Records, allowing us to explore this vast information realm with intention. Okay, hold on. Consciously exploring the Akashic Records through lucid dreaming. That's a rabbit hole I'm definitely going to need to explore further. But before we go full inception, I think we've covered a lot of ground here in part one.
We have. Yeah, we've explored the concept of the Akashic Records, its historical roots, and its potential connections to both scientific and spiritual frameworks. We've also touched on the idea of accessing this knowledge through altered states of consciousness and the importance of the right brain.
So we've laid the groundwork, but there's so much more to explore. In part two, we'll dive into the potential applications of the Akashic Records. Can we actually use this knowledge to improve our lives or understand our place in the universe? And what about this law of attraction thing? How does that tie in? Stay tuned for part two, where we'll delve deeper into these mind-bending questions.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Akashic Records. You know, before we ventured into the realm of lucid dreaming and right brain intuition, we were discussing the potential of these records. What could accessing this universal knowledge actually mean for us?
Right. It's all very intriguing, this cosmic library idea. But what's the practical application? Can we actually use this knowledge to, improve our lives, understand our place in the universe, maybe even write a best-selling novel based on future events?
Right. Well, while the Akashic Records might not offer like a step-by-step guide to winning the lottery or predicting the next viral meme, the source material does point to some pretty profound implications. Imagine gaining a deeper understanding of your own life path, your strengths, your weaknesses, the recurring patterns that might be influencing your experiences.
So, like having access to a cosmic therapist who can help us understand our subconscious motivations and make more informed choices. Where do I sign up?
Well, it's not quite as simple as that.
Yeah.
Remember, accessing the Akashic Records, as our source material suggests, requires a shift in consciousness. A willingness to kind of quiet the mind and tap into our intuition is more about understanding possibilities, not necessarily dictating outcomes.
Okay, right. No cosmic cheat codes. But even if we can't use it to predict the future with absolute certainty, the idea of gaining a deeper understanding of our own potential and the interconnectedness of all things is pretty powerful in itself.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to the concept of the law of attraction, which we briefly touched upon earlier.
Okay. The law of attraction. I've heard of it, but I've always been a bit skeptical. Isn't it just wishful thinking dressed up in spiritual jargon?
Yeah. The law of attraction can definitely be oversimplified and misrepresented. But at its core, it's really about the idea that our thoughts and beliefs create our reality. And what's interesting is that the Akashic Records concept, as suggested in our source material, provides a potential mechanism for how this might actually work.
Okay. I'm listening. How do the Akashic Records tie into the law of attraction?
Well, imagine the Akashic Records, not just as a passive library of information, but as a dynamic, responsive field that we're constantly interacting with, our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. They generate energy, and that energy resonates with the information contained within the Akashic Records.
Okay. So if we're constantly emitting these vibrational signals, are we essentially attracting experiences that align with our dominant thoughts and beliefs? Like if I'm constantly worried about things going wrong, am I actually drawing negative experiences towards me?
Oh, the source material does suggest that this might be the case. It's not about blaming ourselves for negative experiences, but rather understanding that our inner world kind of shapes our outer world. By shifting our focus to positive thoughts and beliefs, we might be able to align ourselves with more favorable outcomes. Think of it like tuning a radio. Your thoughts and beliefs are the dial, and the Akashic Records are the broadcast.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. But if it's all about our thoughts and beliefs, what about free will? Do we have any control over our destiny, or are we just puppets dancing to the tune of our subconscious programming?
Well, this is where the concept of the Akashic Records and how it relates to the law of attraction gets really interesting. Remember, it's not just a record of the past, but also of all possibilities, all potential futures.
So are we saying that there are like multiple timelines, multiple versions of ourselves living out different scenarios based on the choices we make? Is this where we venture into the multiverse?
Well, while the source material doesn't explicitly delve into the multiverse theory, it does suggest that we have more agency in shaping our reality than we might realize. By consciously choosing our thoughts and beliefs, we might be able to navigate towards the timelines that align with our highest potential. Think of it like choosing a path through a forest. The Akashic Records represent the forest as a whole, with all its potential routes, and our thoughts and beliefs guide us along a particular path.
So it's not about passively accepting a predetermined fate, but actively participating in co-creating our reality. I like that. It's empowering. But it also raises a lot of questions about responsibility. If we're shaping our reality with our thoughts, what happens when things go wrong? Are we to blame?
Well, this is where compassion and self-awareness become crucial. It's about understanding that we're all on a journey of growth and evolution. We make mistakes, we learn, and we hopefully evolve towards greater understanding and alignment with our true selves.
That's a really important point. It's not about perfection, but about progress. And if the Akashic Records can provide us with a deeper understanding of our own patterns and potentials, then that's a pretty valuable tool for personal growth and evolution.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual growth. Our source material hints at even greater implications. Imagine the potential for collective evolution. If we can tap into the wisdom and knowledge contained within the Akashic Records.
Okay, now you're talking. We could solve global conflicts, find solutions to climate change, maybe even learn how to make a decent cup of coffee without burning the beans. The possibilities are endless.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But the idea of accessing a universal source of knowledge and wisdom is certainly tantalizing. It begs the question, what kind of breakthroughs might be possible? If we could tap into this collective consciousness, imagine a world where scientific discoveries, artistic inspiration, and solutions to global issues could be accessed through the Akashic Records, accelerating our progress in ways we can't even fathom yet.
This is where things start to feel a bit like a science fiction novel. But hey, science fiction has a pretty good track record of predicting the future, right? Maybe one day we'll all be walking around with Akashic record readers, downloading information straight into our brains. Imagine a world where learning isn't a matter of years of study, but of accessing the right information instantly.
Right. Well, while that might be a bit far-fetched, the source material does highlight the importance of technology in potentially bridging the gap between our current understanding and the vast realm of knowledge that might be accessible through the Akashic Records.
So we're talking about using technology to enhance our intuition, to create tools that help us decode the information contained within the Akashic field. Like, instead of years of meditation to access glimpses of this knowledge, we could have devices that amplify our natural abilities.
Exactly. And who knows what kind of technological advancements might emerge in the future. Perhaps we'll develop devices that can measure subtle energy fields, interpret brainwave patterns, or even create virtual reality experiences that simulate the feeling of accessing the Akashic Records. Imagine putting on a headset and being immersed in a visual representation of the Akashic field, able to navigate through this sea of information, using our thoughts alone.
Okay, I'm officially back in science fiction territory, but in a really good way. This all ties back to what we discussed earlier. The nature of information. If the Akashic Records are this vast repository of information, and the universe is essentially made of information, as some physicists believe, then the possibilities for understanding and interacting with reality become almost limitless.
And that's precisely what makes this topic so compelling. The Akashic Records concept pushes the boundaries of our current understanding, challenging us to consider what might be possible if we dare to expand our perception of reality. We're not just talking about accessing information, but about understanding the very fabric of reality itself.
This is all incredibly fascinating. But I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed by the sheer scale of these ideas. We've gone from ancient wisdom to quantum physics to mind-blowing possibilities for the future, all in the span of this deep dive. I think I need a moment to process all of this.
Yeah, I understand. It's a lot to take in. And it challenges many of our preconceived notions about the world. But that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it? It pushes us beyond our comfort zones and expands our horizons.
You're absolutely right. And on that note, I think it's time to shift gears a bit. We've explored the potential of the Akashic Records, delved into the intriguing concept of the law of attraction, and even ventured into the realm of future technologies. But now, I want to bring this back to a personal level. In part 3, we'll tackle the big question. What would you, our listener, want to learn from the Akashic Records if you could access them?
Yeah. Join us in part 3 as we explore those personal questions, delve into some final thoughts, and leave you with some provocative questions to keep you pondering long after this episode ends.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Akashic Records. We've gone from ancient spiritual traditions to quantum physics, exploring the potential and even the possible science behind this mind-blowing concept. But now, let's shift gears a bit and get a little more personal. If you could access the Akashic Records, what would you want to know?
That's the question, isn't it? What secrets of the universe, or maybe even more importantly, what secrets of your own WN life would you seek to uncover?
I mean, honestly, there are so many possibilities, it's almost paralyzing. Part of me wants to go for the big stuff, the origins of the universe, the meaning of life, maybe even get a sneak peek at how the next season of my favorite show ends. You know, the important stuff.
Right. I understand the temptation to seek those grand universal answers. But remember, the source material emphasizes that the Akashic Records contain the entirety of existence. That includes every personal experience, every thought, every emotion that has ever been or ever could be. What about those intimate questions, the ones that reside deep within your own heart? What would understanding those reveal?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I'd want to understand my own path better. The choices I've made, the roads not taken, the reasons behind my irrational fear of squirrels. Are there recurring patterns in my life, lessons I need to learn? Or maybe even hidden talents I haven't discovered yet?
Those were all excellent questions, and they really highlight the potential for the Akashic Records to be a tool for self-discovery and personal growth. Imagine gaining insights into your past lives, understanding how those experiences might be influencing your present, and even gaining clarity about your soul's purpose in this lifetime. It's not just about looking back, but understanding how those connections can shape your present and future.
Whoa. Past lives, that's a whole other rabbit hole we could jump down. Maybe another deep dive for another day. But I can see how understanding those connections could be incredibly insightful, even transformative. It makes me wonder about the nature of time itself. If the Akashic Records contain all information, past, present, and future, does that mean time as we experience it is an illusion? Are we all just living out like a pre-written script?
It's a fascinating question, and one that has puzzled philosophers and physicists for centuries. While our source material doesn't offer definitive answers on the nature of time, it does suggest that our linear perception of time might be limited. Perhaps time is more fluid, more interconnected than we realize.
Okay, my brain is starting to hurt again, but in a good way. It's these kinds of questions, these mind-bending possibilities, that make the Akashic Records concept so fascinating, even if we can't definitively prove or disprove their existence. The concept itself serves as a powerful catalyst for exploration and self-reflection.
I agree. And that's really what I hope you, our listener, take away from this deep dive. Even if we never build a machine to read the Akashic Records or develop a fear-proof method for accessing them through lucid dreaming, the very idea invites us to consider a more expansive view of ourselves and the universe.
Yeah. It's like we've been handed a map to a vast, uncharted territory. We may not have all the tools or the understanding yet, but the invitation to explore is there. It's about asking those big questions, tapping into our intuition, and embracing the mystery of it all.
Exactly. And remember, the journey doesn't end here. There are countless resources available for those who wish to delve deeper into this topic. Books, articles, workshops, online communities. The exploration is out there for those who seek it.
So, to our listener, we encourage you to keep those minds curious, those hearts open, and those imaginations ignited. who knows what mysteries and wonders you might uncover as you continue your own deep dive into the vast and ever-expanding realm of knowledge. And hey, if you figure out how to access those Akashic records, maybe drop us a line. We'd love to hear about it. Until next time, happy exploring.